live. I'm here in studio with Maxx, an amazing engineer. He's in LA, so he's visiting LA, and I had him come by so he could jump on the show. It's an honor to sit here and meet with him. He is a staple in the DMV. He's worked on probably hundreds of songs with amazing artists, a lot of which you've heard of. We're gonna jump into all that, talk about who he's worked with, what songs he's worked on, what his process is, his studio, how he learned the game, what equipment he uses, all that great stuff. We were chopping it up right now, you know, the difference between DC and LA, what it's like, and all that. Interesting story. I met him in person years ago on his podcast, which is called the Microonda Podcast, with Settle. Shout out Settle.
Shout out Settle Mundo.
And
Johnny Quest.
Johnny Quest, that's right. Yeah, excuse me, Johnny Quest, your name slipped for a second. God bless y'all. I hope y'all are good. Thank you, bro.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you so much for being on here. So we're in the Arts District, Los Angeles. This is the Cristopolis show. He came by to look at my studio, which is more a visual arts studio, but I'm a musician. I'm a hip hop head. He's an engineer and has worked with a lot of artists, but you work a lot in like the Latin music and more urban.
Yeah,
more
hip hop, yeah, Latin, you know, like reggaeton, and then I've worked with hip hop artists a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So my journey's been taking me through all different types of genres of music.
Yeah. So what's always cool is, I guess, you know, and I like to do this where we kind of take it back a little bit, okay, and talk about, because you love sound.
I do.
Yeah.
But it's something that I kind of developed the sound, right? So when I first started doing music, I wanted to be an artist, right? So I started doing reggaeton, and it was like early 2000s, right, where reggaeton was kind of like at its infancy, and you know, I appreciated the genre so much. I was like, you know what, I want to be a singer. I want to do this, right?
Did you sing more or rap more?
It was a little bit of both. So it was me and my cousin. We started out becoming a duo and like started just putting out music. And back in those times,
that's fascinating. I didn't know this. Yeah, this is really interesting.
So like at that time we were recording ourselves like with like a little headset and like the little, you know, like those headsets for like the call centers and stuff. Yeah. So we had that with Sony Acid, and just like we were, you know.
I remember Sony Acid.
You were young, not knowing what to do. So it's like, and then the program was super simple at that time.
Mm-hmm. Because they had all the loops. They had the loop libraries.
Exactly. So it's like, you know, and I feel like the DAWs at the time weren't really as like, you know, well refined like they are now. So
see, people aren't gonna know what a DAW is.
Or the, you know, digital audio workstation, pretty much, which is like Pro Tools, your Logics, you know, Reasons, Fruity Loops now. So we started doing that. It wasn't until I met one of my friends out in Manassas, who is now an engineer in Miami, who kind of like showed me how everything worked, how to record, how to approach, be an artist on the mic, and I fell in love with that craft.
What was his name?
He's EQ.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's
shout out EQ.
Yeah, he's one of the guys I kind of still look up to. So he taught me everything I know, gave me my first template, and then it wasn't until Maryland, when I started working in Maryland, where I started working with more hip hop guys.
Got it.
Yeah, so it was and that was a great experience. I worked with Settle, I worked with Phenomenon, like Mr. Forge, like guys like that, where
This is a who's who of Latin hip hop in the DMV.
And actually, on some real shit, like I was telling Forces the other day, I kind of looked up to you guys, right? Because you guys were kind of like, at the time of MySpace, guys putting out your music and stuff like that, and I didn't know anything about music. I just knew who was making noise. It was you guys, Mafia Crew, like Mr. Pelon, guys like that, where I was like, damn, I want to be like these guys one day.
Yeah, brother.
Right?
Thank you, man.
So, and then as much as I got to network and got big, started practicing my craft and growing, I got to meet all of you guys. So it's like, so for me, it's always been like milestones, right?
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's been great. It's been a great journey so far.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. So is there any Maxx music still floating around out there?
No,
You're like, bro, I took it all down.
Yeah, that's all gone now. Well, I'm pretty sure someone has stuff from back in the day. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of guys I worked with that still have their music, but I'm pretty sure that, yeah, it's floating out there somewhere. It's not online though.
But it's not like on Spotify.
No, nothing like that.
Check, cause I go check it out. I'm curious and.
No, that was a long time ago. That was
young
Mad Max. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's some background on how you started engineering. I think that that's kind of like a story that I've heard, you know, different variations of it. The first studio I recorded out of was in Virginia, and it was run by a label called Depth Charge, which is a bunch of rappers. They're a pretty well-known studio.
Mr. Wise, I think, right?
And Wise was a rapper,
Yeah.
right? So Wise was a rapper and became an incredible engineer. He engineers like I believe the Nationals games, and you know, so but people start because they have a love of music, and then later I worked out of Listen Vision, and Boom was a DJ.
Yeah, shout out Boom. Yeah.
Right, shout out Boom. So Boom was a DJ before he became an engineer, right? And still is a DJ, but I think maybe is known more for his studio. So that kind of journey, like you see similar, you know, they fall in love with music. People love music. But we were talking, and you were talking to me about Dolby Atmos, and you were just blowing my mind about the different technology, how the technology is changing. And I was like, dude, you're gonna work on movies, you're gonna work on everything.
Yeah.
So what is Dolby Atmos? What is this new kind of like sonic technology that's, you know, coming out here?
So Dolby Atmos is it's a new way of listening to music, right? So right now the technology is at its infancy, and you know there's no standard to it. So I know Apple's been pushing it with their headphones. Like now you see Beats have like spatial audio capabilities. The same with the AirPods. So it's pretty much listening to music in surround sound. So now you can, instead of listening to like music in stereo, you can actually experience like what the hi-hats are doing or what snares are doing, where the drums hitting, you know, like, or, you know, vocal effects where you have like a delay that instead of going left to right, it's going all around you, right? So I feel like now Apple's been pushing it pretty hard, and I feel like a lot of companies are actually moving there, and I feel like in the next couple of years, like that's gonna be like the thing, right? It's gonna be standard. It's gonna be like, you know, you see it in your cars, you're gonna see it everywhere.
So when you're mixing that, are they multiple speakers? So or is it like a spectrum of sound?
So it depends. Like, so where I do it, I mix on my the AirPod Maxes. Yeah. It looks like they have the spatial audio capabilities. So you do need like extra speakers. I know a lot of studios now have like a 7.1, 0.4, you know, like system. Yeah. Which is like 7 speakers around you, a bass, and then you have 4 speakers up on top. Stuff like they have those kind of setups, so that way you are able to experience it, and while you're mixing, you're like, you know what, I want the hi-hat over here, or I want the, you know, the pianos coming from the left to the right, or, you know, like,
or something moving,
you know. So, you know, right now it's like I said, it's in its infancy, and you can have the room to be creative with it.
That's cool, man.
It's amazing.
So when you're in your studio, when you're in your home environment, what is your digital audio workstation? What is the DAW that you prefer, that's your go-to?
So I picked up Pro Tools from the beginning, and I've always stuck with that. So it's like Pro Tools for me has been my go-to. It's like the easiest for me. And I know a lot of guys, you know, I've seen amazing engineers we use for Logic or Ableton or like, you know, Cubase, you know, but for me, Pro Tools has always been
Well, I feel that like Pro Tools has been the industry standard. Yeah. For the last forever, right? Since people started recording on a computer, right? Because there was that, even on my older albums, we weren't really using computers yet. We were doing, my very first work, we were just doing...
2-track?
No, we were doing ADATs.
Oh, okay, wow, okay.
Yeah, we were doing ADATs. So we'd have 8 tracks, and the ADATs would be daisy-chained, right? So you'd have 3 ADAT machines. Wow. Right, that's how old I am, bro. Yeah, 3 ADAT machines, and then you daisy chain the ADAT machines, and it would be 24 tracks. Okay. And then Soon after that, so then the computer was used not to record, but to like do some other stuff. But we were still using the mixing board,
Yeah.
right? And we, you had the effects processors, and we would do the effects on the mixing board and everything. But then, by my second album, everything was in the computer.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the board.
So what'd you do when you messed up?
You did it over.
Oh, okay.
No, it was, and no. Do you know what the craziest thing was? That's so funny. That's a good question. Yeah, you did it over.
Yeah.
When you would come in with a producer,
Yeah.
and drop the beat, you had to drop the beat. You had to drop the stems real time.
Yeah.
Right. So like you'd have
So
like
you physically had to be like, like
So they would have it. They would have it. So if they knew what they were doing, right? Because some producers are incredibly talented, but then they don't know the technology, so they would just like finger drum. But let's say they knew what they were doing, so they would arrange the track.
Yeah.
So then, for 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes, it would be snare,
Damn.
and then it'd be kick,
Uh-huh.
right? And then it'd be like the bass lines, and then it'd be the melody,
Okay.
right? And we'd have to do a track by. So basically, you pay for studio time,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a 4-hour block, and 2 hours for dropping the beat in,
That's crazy. Yeah.
and then they'd do like maybe like a rough mix, and you
Yeah.
might get some vocals. That was your first session.
Oh wow.
That's how it was, man. But then by the time it advanced so quickly that by the time I was back recording for like my second album, we were doing everything in the box.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, because I know Pro Tools was one of the first like company, or like I think it was DigiDesign at the time, was like the first companies to actually bring that audio workspace into the home, making it digital. But yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that? That's how it was.
Yeah.
And then by the time I started engineering my own stuff, which was way later, I'd already been like doing music for like maybe 10 years. I wanted to turn around quicker, right? So I wanted to turn around quicker. I wanted to bring my price point down. Getting beats used to be really hard. And then getting beats just exploded. It was like I knew a lot of people, and then getting beats was easier. So I wanted to be able to like record. I wanted to get prolific. And so I learned how to do my own thing, and I learned on Logic.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're talking years later. You got in earlier, but what came even after I learned, which completely, and I think reggaeton played a big part of it, was Fruity Loops.
Yeah, Fruity Loops. Yeah.
Fruity Loops, like people, like I remember Fruity Loops was like a free program almost, right?
Yeah, at the time it was, or something. You get people cracked it most of the time. Yeah.
And then, but FL Studios, like that's like a full-on program.
It's like it's the same thing. I think it's like they rebranded and just made the DAW way better.
Yeah.
Because now that has become industry standard for production, right? So a lot of like even
FL Studio, like the highest level producers, that's what they're using.
That's what most of them are using. Yeah. So like if you go to a lot of studios like in Atlanta or like even Miami, like everyone's using the Fruity Loops. Everyone's collabing on Fruity Loops. Like, and it's just, and like there's even guys now like producers who are engineers. They record on Fruity Loops. So it's like, they've really stepped up the game as far as, they've come a long way since, the time of before, right? So
the early reggaeton, when reggaeton was popping in the early 2000s, people were using Fruity Loops, so they were getting the
straight production, right? So it's like, now it's a whole DAW by itself, and like it's come a long way. Like there's a lot of industry producers now that use Fruity Loops.
Is there anything lost when somebody's done everything in Fruity Loops, and then they send it over to you, and you open it and you want to work in Pro Tools? Is there anything lost in that?
No, it's the only thing. I think like it's more of so normally how a lot of producers do is they'll print out the stems, and so obviously the MIDI data won't transfer over because of two programs. But what most producers do is just print out the stems and waves, and then Fruity Loops has that option where they would just you consolidate everything, and then it'll legit go down by track, and then put it into a folder for you. So that way you just send that folder over.
So for people listening that aren't like music nerds like us, right? Stems. What are stems?
Stems are just track outs of beats individually. So 2-track, what we call it, is pretty much just the beat in the WAV file.
Yeah.
And then the stems, there's pretty much that 2-track individualized into each instrument and then sent over to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's cool about stems is that like, if we did a song together, but I come in 30 seconds into it, the stem actually starts from the beginning of the song. right? And then we could just send it over, and you could line it up like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, or like like most of the time it's they'll send me like a lot of most producers will send me like a rough or like their like a rough version of their song, and then I'll just line it up according to that, and then.
Do you do a lot of lineups by ear?
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah, so it's just making sure everything is lined up and ready to go.
That's tough sometimes.
Yeah, but usually like once it's consolidated, like it'll be if it's song's like 3 minutes, you have this long track of 3 minutes, and it all lines up together. So that way, I just upload it, and I don't really have to move anything around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just pretty much enhance it and just mix it from there.
Yeah, the tough part is because I like to cut out the a lot of the background noise.
Yeah.
But once you do that, you lose the the full track unless you spread the whole thing back out.
Yeah. No, it happens sometimes, and then but it's but like I said, like Fruit Loops have gotten a lot better with that. So it's like they know that most of these DAW companies know that there's a lot of collaboration between DAWs happening, so they've made it a lot easier to transfer sounds and stems over from DAW to DAW.
So you start out by being an artist, then you see the engineer doing his craft, you fall in love with it, you start working in studios, then you start working on other artist projects.
Yeah.
What was like the first 1 or 2 project that you kind of really worked on? You did like an album with the person, and you were invested in that project as the engineer.
So I've had, as far as full-blown albums, I really haven't had a chance to work on like a lot of industry stuff, but I've done singles here and there. So my voice, I have one of my voice Sencillos, kind of like my day one. Shout out Sencillo. He was working with Fuego one time. He just came through his house, and we did a lot of stuff in his basement, like in Sencillo's basement, and recorded stuff with him. And this is at the point where Fuego was signed to Chosen Few.
Okay, so this is Chosen Few era Fuego.
Yeah.
And Fuego's in the studio at your boy's house, and you're there like
just trying.
Dude, I'm working with Fuego.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's so yeah, it was that we worked for a while on a couple songs here and there, and then a couple featurings that my boy Sencillo had. But I was in the mix always. I don't think any of the songs we worked with were released, but but it was just an experience working with Fuego. Also with my boy Sencillo, a lot of networking. We were doing a lot of networking at the time. And we had pleasure to meet Sir Speedy, or someone who knew Sir Speedy, right? And then they brought him to the studio, and we worked on stuff with him. We got to network with him, and that was a good experience. And then from there, it's just working with local artists.
And working with artists that have, reached that next level, right? That they're known around the world. Have you noticed something maybe different from the local artists? Like, is there a charisma? Is there an X factor?
I don't think.
Or do they just seem normal?
They seem normal. It depends on the artist, though. I know, like, most like guys like say Yaga. I met Yaga through my boy Sway Diaz. Shout out to Sway Diaz. He did a couple songs with him. We released the track Harley Quinn that came out I think a couple years ago. And they were like Sir Speedy, him, Fuego, were all like humble people. So we never really got that egotistic side of it. But I do notice that compared to the local artists, it just seems they're more consistent, right? Where at least like they know it's like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is my job. I have to constantly keep feeding the fan base music. So they constantly do that versus like some local artists. Well, we all have day jobs, we have lives. So it's the dropping music isn't as consistent.
Got it.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of key to their success or musicians' success is consistently dropping music.
Got it. So they're like feeding the machine.
Feeding the machine consistently.
Got it. That's cool, man. Yeah, there's a lot of artists that I've met or learned about, especially like newer, younger cats, through your page. So like I follow you, I've met you in person, and then I've met people, been put on to people because they were working with you in the studio. Okay. It's like, oh, that dude's nice. Yeah, he could rhyme,
Yeah.
Are there any artists that you're working with right now that you're like, this dude's hot, this dude's just the right, couple things, and they're gonna blow?
For me, it's Javi Rodriguez and Uptown Cheeto. Like those are the two guys that I feel like they're young, they're hungry, and I feel like their music is sounding great and they know the direction they want to go. So it's a lot easier kind of guiding them through the path. Because I know like, and I don't know, like growing up in the DMV, we didn't really have mentors.
Yeah,
We never had like people guiding us to the right direction. We always had people telling, either closing doors or telling us.
Well, right, everybody's closing doors,
Yeah.
and then people leave.
Yeah,
like if you have any
exactly.
success, you come to LA or you go to New York.
Exactly.
Maybe Miami.
Exactly. So it's like we see a lot of that, and like, so I like as far as engineers and producers, we never really had that mentorship of like, so we were just had to figure out on our own. So I never wanted to be that. I never wanted to be the guy to be like.
Dope.
Close doors or be like, no, you're supposed to do it this way because I feel like you're supposed to do it this way, right? It's more of, I've always been like, all right, why are these guys moving the way they're moving, right? And then bringing that information that I learned and giving it back to the younger guys, right? Where it's like, look, you need to keep dropping music consistently. You need to keep doing this. You need to keep pushing, go out networking, leave your hometown in order to figure out these connects. So I feel like Cheeto and Javi Rodriguez have been one of the two guys that kind of taken that advice and kind of ran with it, right?
So Javi Rodriguez, does he do reggaeton?
He does Latin music, so it's right now so reggaeton is such in a good era right now where it's more, I remember back in the early 2000s and even to like maybe 2010 to like before the era we are now, reggaeton was such a cookie cutter sound, right? Where it's like the beats were similar, everything. So I feel like after kind of like the Latin trap was introduced, it kind of gave reggaeton a push start to be like, oh, now we have to change the way we do things or the way the music sounds. So it kind of evolved into a little bit something great where Bad Bunny came and started experimenting with the elements of reggaeton and creating different types of music with it. And I feel like Javi Rodriguez is one of those guys that, says I like the way this artist sounds or these beats sounds, but I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
Right. So like, he'll keep certain drums while he wants his drums to hit really hard, really punchy, right? Versus like, keeping that like dance club or dance like things. And then since he hosts his events, and something that's one smart thing that he's been doing is like he hosts, and this one thing that I really look up to this kid for is like he hosts like parties on Fridays at Tokyo Pro in DC, and he tests his music out there.
Oh, that's dope.
So he's like, yo, play this song, da-da-da. So if it works in the club, he's like, fuck it, let's release it.
So they put it in the mix,
exactly,
right in there with
and he's
other music that's out.
Exactly, he doesn't do that just for himself, but he does it for other artists locally.
Got it.
So he's like, okay, cool, let me just play it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? And he's cultivating that culture where it's like, what, it's okay to if your music's hot, we'll play it. You feel me? And I feel like in the DMV, no one's ever done that.
Never.
So it's like, and it's great because he's great at throwing parties.
You gotta be from the DMV and move to New York and blow up, and then they'll play you in the DMV.
Exactly. So and he's been doing that. So it's like it's really inspiring watching him grow as far as like an artist and doing that for the culture as far as DC goes, right?
Yeah.
So it's because I think it's something that is really needed. So I feel like it's been a fun experience working with him. So it's like, and I feel like, being in the right rooms and being, I think he's right there from being, like, he has that it factor, I feel like. Yeah.
That's important. Shout out Javi Rodriguez.
Shout out.
Keep doing your thing. We're talking about you right here in the Cristopolis show. And then you mentioned Uptown Cheeto.
Uptown Cheeto. Yeah.
I found him through your page also.
Mm-hmm.
He raps.
He's a rapper.
And I think he's from Uptown.
He's Uptown,
right?
Yeah.
I used to live on Georgia Avenue.
Okay.
Right? So I know about Uptown. So shout out to Uptown Cheeto. What's his style like?
Uptown Cheeto. So DC right now is going through a lot of it's trying to find its identity in hip hop, right? Where it's either creating it's like in between an Atlanta, New York style, right? Where Uptown Cheeto, I feel, is more of an LA vibe, right? Where his music's more laid back, it's more chill, it's more has a lot of melodies to it. His rhymes are really good. So he's one of those kids that like rap from the heart, right? So it's so I feel like he's one of he resonates with a lot of people, right? Because he's not talking about street stuff, or he's not talking about he's talking about being him, and in the mix of being just being different, right? So he's once I met him, he's one of those kids that doesn't drink, wherever he's just like. And he kind of prides himself that was like, oh, I'm the kid that never drinks, but I'm around drunk niggas all the time. So it's like
he's focused on the prize.
On the prize.
He's trying to get to what he wants in life.
Yeah, for sure. And he's like, and it all that when you hear it through his music, right? Where it's like he raps about it, and and I feel like that's a lot. There's a lot of feeling there. So I feel like he's one of those guys too, being in the right situation. I feel like he's one of those kids that could blow. Yeah.
Well, shout out Uptown
Yeah.
Cheeto. We're wishing you the best and,
Hell yeah.
and speaking praise on your name. That's dope, man. So another cat, two people that I learned about from you, just following your page that I've actually never met on person. One was Obi Amaya.
That's my guy, yeah.
And so you've been working with him and pumping him for like a little bit now, but I know just maybe like a couple years ago, I would see him coming out and he could rap real good, and I was like, oh, okay, and he had good stage presence.
Yeah.
So that's another dude that you've been working with a lot.
Obi Amaya is an artist, right?
Mm.
He's a lyricist. He's one of those guys that can go toe to toe with any lyricist out there, right? I was my brother. You know, I love the kid a lot, right? So he, I love working with him because his mind is just like he knows. He's very intricate as far as his wordplay goes, as far as like what he speaks of, and he represents El Salvador, right? So it's like that's his very pride where he's come from, or like where he came from, or where he's going. So I feel like he, you know, I don't know. I feel like Obi is one of those artists who was born in the wrong generation, right? Where it's like I feel he could, you know, that 5 years ago Obi would have been killing it, right?
Yeah.
And even now, like
He's got lyrics.
He has lyrics. He's a lyricist, right? He's a storyteller, right? So it's like, you know, and now even with the music, like when we did, you know, First Generation, you know, he made sure that, you know, he wanted to represent that he was a first generation,
right, child of immigrants.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like me too,
Yeah.
right? Like child of immigrants.
And I feel like that's why a lot of his music resonates with a lot of people, because that's what he, you know, he wants to put that light out there where it's like, look, I'm a first, you know, I'm proud for where I've come from, but at the same time, I know where my people are going.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so I feel like, yeah, Obi's a great artist, dude. And it's been really good working with him.
That's dope, man. What I liked about him, like you say, he's from El Salvador, and there's a big Salvadorian community in the DC area. But I feel like, and it just depends, like if you're like maybe like from DC, Maryland, maybe a little bit more than Virginia, the whole DMV. Maryland Salvadorians got a certain swagger, right? It's like a certain flavor. It's like a certain flavor of Salvadorian, right? They're proud of their heritage. Right, but it's got that little Maryland, you know,
the little toughness to it.
A little toughness, it's a little toughness. It's a little swagger that's real unique. You got to be from the DC area to understand. Like, it's different from Fairfax County, right? It's different from Fairfax County.
Yeah.
So not better, not worse. It's different, you know. So that I love the representation of an artist. You know, bringing that representation, you know, so growing up in the DC area, growing up around Latinos my whole life, but being from Virginia and then living in DC, and then you head out, you know, and you're out in Maryland chilling, and you're like, oh, okay, they got their own vibe out here popping off, right? So it was really dope to see a nice lyricist representing that, you know, and doing it well. The other person, I'm not sure how much you've worked with her, but I learned about her through your page, was Rena B.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. And she's another person that is a hustler and been out there like grinding and doing stuff in the urban Latin hip hop community a lot, you know. But you get from behind the mixing board at times, and you have done visual work, right? Like I've seen you work with artists, or you're doing stuff where like Obi Amaya and cats that you work with are getting a lot of visuals when they hook up with you. Is that you? Is that people that you're bringing in? How is that happening?
So another artist I work with that I have mad respect for is Isai. I don't know if you've peeped his music. He's one like another like artist is phenomenal, right? His music's very laid back. It's, you know, it's music to smoke to, and like, you know, it's you're riding down the whip on 495. You know, you put on an Isai record, it's just like, you know, it puts you in a good mood. When I met him, Isa's also a very talented videographer. So like I got with him, and when I first met him, I was like, hey, you know, is it cool if you document some of the stuff that I'm doing or artists that I'm working with? That way, you know, it's showing that we're kind of like moving as a unit, right?
Yeah.
Where like I want to, you know, like I feel like a lot of places like Atlanta or LA or like Miami, you know, we have a lot of content that's being created that is being shown as far as behind the scenes stuff, right? And I feel like that's what kind of intrigues a lot of artists, right? Where it's
100%.
like, you know, they're like, oh, okay, these persons are moving this, you know, and you're kind of connecting the dots where it's like, all right, you like the way Obi sounds, you like the way Isai sounds, Ichido, Javi, Rina, then who do you go to, right? Who's the person you want to go to, right?
This sound is coming from this studio.
From this person or this studio or whatever, right? So it's like, so I wanted that to be documented.
Smart.
Right? I wanted it to be documented, to be known where, you know, how all these guys, how all we're all moving, right? And that way, you know, when you go to Max's page, then all right, let me lock in with Obi, let me lock in with Issa, let me lock in with Rina, and then, you know, that way they're like, oh, okay, bet, now I see all these videos that Javi's dropping, I see all these videos that you know, Cheeto's dropping, and, you know, you're kind of creating this culture now where it's like, you know, let me tap in with this guy, let me tap in with this guy, right? So, and I've always wanted that for the DMV, because I feel like we never got that.
No.
You feel me? So
I had to do everything myself, and, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's tough.
So, you know, and it's just creating that culture where, like, we're collaborating, right? And I feel like now it's more than ever is important, right? And especially coming out to LA, you see everybody, you know.
Everybody's collaborating out here.
Exactly. So creating or giving people opportunities where it's like, it's become a thing where, you know, it's like, hey, I got this opportunity. It's going to look good on me if I, you know, present this opportunity to you and, you know, help you out, which, you know, we don't have that. We haven't fostered that. So it's like, and it's something that I've always wanted to create because I never got it growing, like at least growing in my career.
Yeah, we were talking about that when we were chopping it up right before we came on the live. In the DMV, it's almost like I feel, and it's also because they're like 3 different states too, right?
Yeah.
So Maryland and DC and Virginia, it's like they all have like a vibe also, and it's like, well, who's better? Right, so there's some kind of like that too, you know. It's like, whereas like in a place like LA, the territory, the land is about the same size as what you would call the DC metropolitan area, but it's all just LA. And what I've noticed is that like, it's dope here to, you know, connect with somebody from Irvine, and then somebody else in Inland Empire. And then you're out with somebody out in, you know, Granada Hills, and everybody comes and meets up downtown, right? And like that vibe here is just dope that you're like, I got peoples everywhere. Yeah. It's cool here, whereas in DC, it's like, this is Maryland cats, you know what I'm saying? I don't get, it's Virginia cats, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's that's an interesting thing that has held us back, you know, because there's so much talent in the DMV.
Yeah, and I feel like, it's subconsciously we know we're kind of like one unit, right? Where it's like 100%. Because like if you go to Richmond, like Richmond doesn't acknowledge Northern Virginia, right? So it's like, you know, no, we're Virginia, right? You guys are the DC area, you know, you guys are something else. So it's like, you know, our and the style is different of music, right? So I feel like Maryland, like you know, Southern Maryland, DC and Northern Virginia, it's more of the, it's like we the style of music is almost the same. Because it kind of bleeds over to the different, the tri-state area. Yeah. But it's like, you know, subconsciously we know we're kind of like a unit, but we just for some reason separate that. Yeah. It's always been a weird thing to me because like, you know, like, because I've worked with artists, like I work with artists from all 3 places. So it's like, you know, you guys are moving the same way. So why, you know, like why separate it? You know, like why, you know, judge someone from DC or from Virginia or from Maryland. You know?
And then when somebody starts popping off, then they leave.
Yeah. Like, yeah, screw this shit, I'm out. Yeah. I mean,
right. So, because I know a lot of cats that, like from hip hop specifically, that an artist that I love that I think is dope is Odyssey, right? Odyssey's from DC, moved to Brooklyn. Another cat that I think is really, really dope, and I love not only his music, but how much music and at such a high level he puts out. Another rapper, Napoleon the Legend. He's from Maryland. You got people that are famous, Logic, Wale. They all leave. You know what I'm saying? Being out here in LA right now, I've met a ton of cats from DC, and they leave and they go and they work in, you know, whether it's music or whether it's film or something else creative, but they leave.
Yeah.
And they come out here, or, you know, and there was a period of time when I was going to move to Miami, and that was popping off. Fuego did the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So you basically, once it starts popping off for you in the DMV, often cats leave, you know, so
yeah.
I don't know, you know what I mean?
I feel like the DMV hasn't fostered the industry yet. I feel like that's what kind of holds us back, because we go where the industry is, right? So if you want to start monetizing, obviously, like, no matter to what extent you start monetizing your music, you could do it from home nowadays, and it's simpler, but it's just, I feel like LA, like those cities, LA, Atlanta, New York, and Miami, have kind of fostered the industry, right? Where it's like
100%.
They're influenced by it, even if you are an indie artist, right? So you want to get to where everybody's being creative. You want to be in the same mindset, and then DMV hasn't really, like, we create music, but we've never really fostered what to do with it, right? If that makes sense. Like if we don't know, like, what's all right, we pay for studio time, we pay for beats, we create this content, we create the music, the product. So what do we do with it now?
Yeah.
How do we advertise it? Right?
How do you push it?
Like but we don't have anybody to tell us, okay, well, this is what you need to do. You need to sign up with this person. You need to sign up with this. You need to do this. You need to do this. How you need to move. We don't have any of that. We're just kind of like figuring it out on our own, right? And then the guys who leave don't bring that information back.
No.
You feel me? So it's like
they don't come back.
They don't come back. So it's like, so we're like, we see Logic do great things. We see Wale do great things, right? We see like why I feel like one of the persons that actually is kind of starting to do that is IDK. I don't know, he's like a rapper from DC.
Okay, now I don't know him.
Yeah, he's actually out here too. But he's
living in LA now?
I'm not sure if he's the situation, but I know he goes back and forth from DC to LA, and I feel like he's kind of one of those artists that are kind of fostering that.
Yeah.
Right, where it's like, hey, move this way, move that way, and you're starting to see the city change a little bit because of it, right? But it's, but still, I think we have a long way to go as far as learning the industry and learning what to do with the music and how to create these reels or go on Instagram or how to engage an audience, right? I think it's still the mindset's like, I'm gonna put this out and see what happens.
The thing is that it's such a large population and there's so much money in the DC area.
Yeah.
But the money's not a creative money. It's like government and defense contractors and other stuff, right? That people getting paid, and every artist goes through there, for their tour, and there's an abundance of everything, but the main industries aren't creative. And those creative industries, exist here in LA. I hear a lot about Atlanta now. Everybody's talking about Atlanta. Being into urban music and hip hop, it's always been New York, right? Yeah. With hip hop. And then being Latino, Miami. Miami's always a bridge. It's kind of like a pop-off point to the rest of Latin America.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. So maybe being in LA, maybe that's the next move.
That's the next move. I mean, hopefully we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's like, every time I've come out here, it's just been linking up with different artists and just networking, a lot of networking, and then learning what I obviously a lot of friends have moved here and they tell me, hey, look, this is what these guys are doing here. Yeah. You guys should apply it back home. So I'll take this information, give it to Javi, give it to Cheeto, give it to everybody I work with. Look, this is what they're doing in LA. Yeah. This is how why don't you
guys try?
That's how it's popping. This is working out there. So why can't we just follow that formula and see how it does here? Yeah. Right. So and it's been it's been working for say for Javi and for Cheeto, because they're young and they're hungry, so they're in that mindset now where it's like, all right, now I need to create content. How do I, the more consistent I am, because I know us growing up, music wasn't as fast. You dropped a song and you could have a whole week to promote it. Now you have hours or days,
Yeah,
so it's like
the window's shorter.
Exactly. So it's like you have to constantly keep dropping because our attention spans are getting smaller.
It's almost like as a creative nowadays, and I think it's not just music. I see it in movies also, and maybe shows. There's a sweet spot for quality that's not super, super high either. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like it's professional and it's done right, but there's an importance now on quantity too, right? Because you have to be constantly, your reel doesn't have to be perfect shot in a 4K Canon. The reel has to be engaging enough for them to consume it. Mm-hmm. And then what else do you got?
Yeah.
Right? And then so the same thing with the song. The song's got to be good, dope. You're in the pocket. I love the vocal tone. I love the hook. Right? What else do you got? You know what I'm saying? That's a real interesting thing. And then if you can, we love music so much, so I get like real like kind of down the rabbit hole. But let's step out and say like Netflix has done that to movies, right? Yeah, you could go try to make, Avatar 2 and use all the budget, the whole movie and everything. But Netflix is cranking out movies every week.
Every week, yeah.
So it's kind of like, is it gonna be for what you did? One movie, they're gonna make 10. Those 10 are gonna do more numbers and more money than your one. So the whole game today, because we live in such a golden era of content, is like that sweet spot between professional level quality, but then a lot of constant. When you zone into somebody and you're about that artist and you love something about them, maybe it's the vocal tone, their vibe, to just get more of them.
Yeah. And I feel like we live in an era now where it's like, like it's taking that Netflix example, like there's something for everybody now, right? Before we're not, we weren't like before, since the world wasn't as fast, we were fed, either you're gonna go watch an action movie or a horror movie, right?
Right.
And then but now it's like, well, we have 10 different horror movies, at different styles of horror movies, right? So it's like same with music, like you have hip hop, but then you have different umbrellas. You got like hyper pop, you got rage music, you got yeet music, you have like all these different styles of music, right, to choose from, right?
Yeah.
And then you just find your vibe. That's why a lot of artists now, like, it's not, you're not thinking about mainstream now. You're thinking about like what's my niche, right? Like what's my niche audience, right? And you can still make money doing that, right? Because now you're accessible to artists that only follow you, right? So when I say like, it's like Logic, for example. Logic toned it, has a niche audience. He went in straight in, and now he's touring, right? So it's like. And I feel like a lot of artists just need to find that niche, right? Where, like, and I feel like I said, like the music industry's changed so much where, you can do whatever and people will support it, right? But you just gotta make more of it, right? And then it's easier to be like used instead of saying, oh, well, Drake's doing this, I'm gonna start doing that. It's more of like, well, how can I do what Drake's doing and apply it to my style and see who likes it or not, right? And do consistently of it, right? So it's like I feel like the music's changed, and I feel like guys are still kind of thinking like there's in DC. I feel like that mentality hasn't really changed. Where like I feel a lot of guys who have been in it for a long time who are still at home are kind of like drilling down. It's like, no, well, you have to do hip hop has to sound like this, right? Like you have to be Nas, you have to be Biggie. Where now we have Fuego, we have like Chance the Rapper, we have.
It's really broad now.
Yeah, it's really broad now. So you could be whatever, you could be Uptown Cheeto, like you have, Cheeto has a sound, Javi has a sound, and that's something I'm trying to cultivate with these artists.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, and hip hop's global.
And hip hop's global now.
Look at drill.
Yeah, drill music.
Yeah.
The UK has actually like honed in on it.
Dude, they like took over New York.
Exactly, and it took over New York.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's real interesting. Young, so you're in LA. You went to NAMM.
I did go to NAMM, yeah.
How's that?
NAMM's fire. This is my second year going. I love the...
So for people who don't know NAMM and how dope what you just did is,
so
like
NAMM,
what was it?
NAMM is an audio convention, right? For all my audio nerds out there. And NAMM is where pretty much it's kind of like Comic-Con, but for audio, right? So all these companies that have their hands in audio, whether it be guitars or instruments or DJs or pro audio, like everyone's there to showcase their new products coming up for the new year. What the pro audio stuff has like been doing, like so I'm part of this platform called Engineers that Ali, Kendrick Lamar's engineer, started. And
that's cool. Yeah, because I see you like so. And basically, what that is, if somebody wants to work with you,
correct,
they could go to that.
Just to say, like, if someone that heard like Obi's song and he lives in Canada, is like, yo, I wanted my stuff to get mixed by Maxx. They can search me up on Engineers, and then I'll have my services on there, and they can actually book me on there.
But it's spelled ears.
And
it's spelled engine ears.
Yeah.
Right. So engineears.com.
Right.
And so if you go, like if you watch this and then you saw the link to his page and then you listen to some of the artists you work with, and you are like, I want that sound. They can go to engineers.com
And book me for
and book you and basically record, send it to you.
Correct.
And then you'll make it sound.
Yeah, just
you'll make it sound right.
Yeah, make it sound right for them. Yep. And then they've actually, what they've done, they've created panels, right, where it's like, since Ali's in the industry, he knows all the other, he's friends with engineers there, like industry producers and stuff. He'll set up these panels, right, where it's like, they'll talk about their experiences, how they work with certain artists. I met a lot of great guys from there. So they started doing it, and then you have Mix with the Masters who've been doing the same thing. You have panels that, you have engineers from different types of genres. They just sit down and go through the process. Like, CLA was there this year. You had Tizio, Baines, like all these guys who have their hands on industry projects. It's just talking about, okay, look, this is what I did. This is the song. This is my experience working with this artist, right? And then, it kind of puts everybody in a playing field where it's like, wow, okay, I can talk to this guy and actually like get advice from him, right? So NAMM has been actually pretty good. And every year I go, it's always something different, right? So it's
dope, man.
yeah.
How many days was it?
3 days.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
And it's like panels after panel. Right?
Panels after panels, yeah. And then and it's interesting just hearing different guys talk about different things, and it's like, yeah, it's crazy just playing around with the toys that microphones are over there, preamps and stuff like that. Just get to listen.
Do they have beat machines too?
Everything, yeah.
Wow.
You name it, they have it. So it's crazy.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So, if you're in the DMV area and people wanna. Well, let's just say people want to find out more about you. Yeah. How do they do that?
They can go to my website, whoismadmax.com. You can go to my Instagram, whoismadmax, and it's pretty much all across social media.
And that's Mad with 2Ds,
2Ds, 2 X's.
and Max with 2 X's. Yep. So it's whoismad, 2Ds, Max, 2 X's.com.
Correct.
And then that links to like your engineers, everything. All your social media, the background
people,
on you.
Yeah, the people I work with and everything.
That's dope because I hope that somebody sees this and finds out about you and wants to work with you. A couple questions before we wrap, just like some fun questions. Favorite Latin artist?
Favorite Latin artist right now is Eladio Carrillo. Right, I like it because he's also I feel like he's one of those guys who are lyricists, right? But he's kind of making that new different he's making modern music with kind of like being a lyricist, right? He understands the music. He understands his lyrics are on point, and he can cross over between Latin trap and Latin hip hop and actually and reggaeton. Because his last album he had English artists on there. I was like, wow, the combinations was just great.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Favorite hip hop artist?
Favorite hip hop artist. As of now, so I'm very niche when it comes to favorite hip hop artists. I've always been a Kid Cudi guy or Chance the Rapper, but I think I have to give it to Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is one of my all-time favorites. I think one of my favorite albums of all time has to be Good Kid, Mad City, right? Yeah. So it's I just love the way his wordplay and he's very creative of every project he drops. So I love Kendrick. He's cool. Yeah.
His mind, he's a genius.
He's a genius. Yeah.
Yeah, his mind is different.
Yeah.
Did you see the new House Party with Kid Cudi in it?
No, not yet.
Yeah. If you like Kid Cudi, you're gonna love that movie. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. The new House Party. You're into other stuff other than music. You kind of geek out on comic books and stuff. What are some other interests that you have in your creativity that you get ideas from and other things? It's
weird because so music's always been my love, right? So it's but I've never really stuck to one genre. I've always growing up in a Spanish home, you always listen to Juan Gabriel, you had Los Hermanos Flores growing up, Sonora Dinamita, guys like that, right? And my dad also listened to a lot of rock growing up, Black Sabbath, AC/DC. We had Michael Jackson playing in the house.
Yeah, 70s and 80s, right?
Stuff. So it's I grew up with that kind of music, and so even now, into my adult life, it's always been for me, Gorillaz has always been, some of my influences as far as music or sonically how things sound. So it's I listen to a lot of stuff. So not just hip hop and reggaeton, and also I like anime. I'm a true nerd because growing up, my parents didn't have much. Right? I'm first generation also, so it's all we had was, every time my mom went grocery shopping, there was a comic book right next door, and I would be like, let me stop in and see what Spider-Man's up to.
What can I get for $1?
Yeah,
$1.25.
So it's like, I grew up with the Avengers and Spider-Man and Batman, all those characters. So it's like, so for me, movies and the movies have been great, and outside the music stuff, movies, comic books, anime, and it's something that me and my wife actually got to enjoy. We share the love for film together. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's movies,
yeah, I'm big into movies also, and I grew up loving comic books. Who's your favorite comic book character?
Comic book character? That's a tough one.
It's hard because there's groups of characters. There's crews also.
But for me, I'm more of a villain guy. I love good villains, right? For me, the Joker, Thanos, guys like that, where it's they're villains to be, not to be just evil, but just because they have a purpose to being evil.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
it's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's you see it both ways. You're all right, how can the world, the universe is off balance? So I just snap my fingers and just puts it right together. You're okay, I get where you're coming from, right? I understand that. Or it's stuff like that where it's I like a good villain. For me, a good villain's always been great.
That's dope, my man. That's dope. Before we wrap up, any shout outs, any people that you want to put on, you want to make sure that you give them love while you're here?
Yeah, just my main guys, Issa, Uptown Cheeto, Javi, Obi Amaya, just those guys I work with, go check them out. Shout outs to Rick Diesel, producer friends, and just those guys, yeah.
All right. Mad Maxx, if you want to book them for your session, engineers, incredible engineer, dope human being.
Let's get it.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, bro.